Welcome back to Scale Success Reptile Podcast. What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining us tonight. If you're watching the replay, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, or if you're watching or listening to other platforms, if you're listening to the audio version on the podcast platform, make sure to come also check it out on YouTube and give us a review or leave a comment here on YouTube. Guys, 2 weeks, here's next podcast. We got Arids Only today. A little bit of more of some kind of lizard, adding to the repertoire of Scale Success Reptile Podcast. I want to be able to offer a variety of reptiles, not just snakes, not just hognose. So this one's really cool, and I think this is very unique because of the limited amount of what's being captive bred. So we're gonna have Phil tonight. He is been working with Euromastyx for a couple years now. We're gonna get him to tell you the story. But yeah, and then what's going on in our world as usual. We have had a show 2 weeks ago in Orlando. I think we haven't done the show since the last podcast. We've been taking about a 2-3 week break. Next show will be in Repticon, Tampa, Florida. So if you guys are in that area, go check it out. And then the weekend after that, we are going to be Reptilian Nation Atlanta. So the dates for that is Repticon Tampa is May 7th and 8th. And then Reptilian Nation Atlanta, the 14th and 15th of June. Sorry, 7th, 8th of June and 14th, 15th of June. So if you guys are in either areas, make sure to go support the shows, come by, talk to us. If you're looking for a hog nose, we have a handful of stuff left. So one of the biggest things that's happened since the last podcast, we had 3 clutches hatch. And man, guys, go check our social media, Instagram. If you guys want to get, up front, close and personal and get first notices on what we're hatching, what we got going on, and what will be available from those clutches, join the Patreon. We have it listed the link below. So go join that and make sure you guys are part of the community. So one of with our first clutch, blew it out the water, man. The odds were just amazing. We got Frost, Super Conda Frost, Conda Arctic Frost albinos, albinos, some Super Conda normals, and normals that are all, Het Frost 66 albino. So that clutch, couldn't ask for more. And we still have a second clutch from that pairing. Another, I think, about 6 or 8 eggs. So still looking forward to that second clutch. And then we have another 2 clutches of albinos, just some, pet level, entry level stuff that we have available for you guys at the shows. If you're looking to just get into hognose, we're going to definitely have some stuff. And then we got some sables and Mai Tais project as well from our third clutch. Those babies will not be at the Atlanta or Repticon Tampa just yet. It'll be at least another month before they're, feeding and ready to go. But if you guys are interested in that stuff, make sure to send us a DM on Instagram or go check out our Husbandry Pro incubator, add yourself to a wait list. So we got going on. What else? Summer starting, like I said, babies are starting to pip, staying busy. Females getting the females that laid eggs back up to their regular weight, and then getting the males back on food. Some of those males, once they're in breeding mode, they skip a few meals. So I'm getting those guys back to the regular schedule. And before we bring out our guests, let's do our sponsorships and our shout outs. So start off with USARK Florida. If you guys are in the reptile world or any exotic animals, make sure to get a membership with USARK Florida. USARK Florida is the first nonprofit to fight against any legislations specifically here in Florida. And as you guys have seen with some other snakes and reptiles, a lot of the legislations that have passed here in Florida have trickled into the other neighboring states. So if you guys want to be, stop it at the beginning, make sure you join the USARK membership for Florida. Even if you don't live in Florida, you need a membership. USARK National, same thing. They're the national nonprofit that fights against any legislations that will limit on what we keep and how we keep them. on reptiles and some exotics. So make sure you guys also get a membership there. Go check it out. Now, as I was mentioning, our Patreon, we started this year. It's steadily grown with a handful of members. This weekend, we're going to have our second live video meetup. So if you guys want to participate in that, make sure to go get a membership and check that out. Now, our sponsorships, Sea Serpents. If you guys are looking for a PVC incubator or rack system, and even some PVC custom enclosures, make sure to go check out Sea Serpents and ask Chris if you want something specific. He can make some custom made stuff, and great customer service. Big supporter of the reptile community, big supporter of US Arc. If you guys ever go to a one of the big shows like Daytona and NRBC Dallas, Tinley, that has those big US Arc auctions, you will see him standing on the chair bidding, starting a bidding war. So, you know, it's always good to support people that support our hobby. Blake's Exotic Feeders. If you guys want to add a little bit of diversity to your reptiles feedings, make sure to go check out Blake's Exotic Feeders. He's down here in South Florida, and he breeds the quails and hatches them directly from his farm to your door. So you skip any middleman. Make sure you go check him out. Tell him Clover's Reptiles sent you. Husbandry Pro. If you guys want to take your record keeping, husbandry tracking to the next level, go check out Husbandry Pro and use the trial code Clover60 for a 6-day free trial. Again, this has, from the beginning that we started using, has kept us on track with our breedings, dialed in some husbandry information. Would not look back if I didn't have this today. I don't know where I would be. Really, you know, enjoy using this program. So go check it out, guys. Other than that, you know, again, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, go follow us on all social media and description below. Also, our guest social media and websites in the description below as well. So go check that stuff out while we bring in the guest, and let's get to talk to some Euromastyx. What's up, Phil? How's it going tonight?
Very, very good. How about yourself?
Good, man. Good. Again, thank you for joining us tonight. You know, you'll be our first Euromastyx breeder and keeper onto the podcast. You know, they've caught my eye. I think your social media, your Instagram was the one that really caught my eye on them, because you're putting out some really good content, information on these guys. So
cool.
You know, really glad to have you on.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah. To start off, man, give us a quick overview of your reptile journey a little bit, and then like what specifically got you into Euros too.
Yeah, sure. So pretty much like everybody, I've been keeping reptiles and amphibians since I was a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just catching stuff in the backyard and wanting to bring it inside, and obsessed with dinosaurs as a kid. Found out you can keep what I thought was a dinosaur in the house. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So it's just, you know, lifelong obsession that at some point spiraled into a business. I've been the first Euro I got was sometime in high school, and I bought it at a local pet shop. It was a Molly, and then from there I just got more and more interested in the genus as a whole, and just kept kind of going crazy and just diving deeper and deeper in, and it found myself out of college and back here stateside, and breeding a few animals kind of on the side for fun, and eventually just kind of realized like, oh, I can make this a business if I want. And then I had a lot of stuff happen in the interim, but that's like the compressed version. Yeah.
Gotcha, man, to get into Euros since high school, you know, you got in pretty early. You know, I don't know too much on like the trends of the Euromastyx.
Sure.
Have you seen what have you seen with the trends?
Yeah. So at the time that I got into it, there were a few other people who, you know, kind of acted as pioneers inside in this particular niche. You had people like Douglas Dix and Lindsay Pike and Noel Alt and Randy Gray. a handful of others here and there who all had taken an interest in Euros in like the 80s, maybe even sooner, and kind of set the tone for doing some of the early research and the early trial and error in terms of their herpetocultural presence. And then, but there were a few people before, they've been in and out of zoos in Europe for a couple centuries, right? So it's they've been around, people have known about them, and they've always had this same trend in terms of sometimes they're imported heavily and sometimes they're not. And when you get sporadic importation coupled with difficulty in establishing captive breeding, then what you end up with is really spotty and scattered availability. And that's pretty much been consistent for as long as I've been involved with them. From the time I started to now, you see the same kind of trends. The way those trends express themselves have changed a lot. It used to be we would get, sporadic shots of Molly, and we get like 10, 12 different species at any given point in time across a few years, and in big numbers, and sometimes mixed species imports and whatnot, and a lot more diversity. And then now we still get lots of imports, but it's pretty much 4 species total. You got ornates, Philbii, Egyptia, and J-Rai. Those are the ones you get all the time, right? Those are the ones you see all the time. Even Philbii, I only mentioned Philbii because some recently came into the country, but there's just such a huge variety of different ones that come in that the trends are always changing. It's a pretty remarkable thing to watch.
Yeah. And with that, have you seen in the last couple of years, more people pushing for captive bred and born stuff?
Yeah. I think this trend is not specific to Euromastyx. I think it's probably herpetoculture wide. You see a lot more people looking for, truly captive bred. People are trying to put a lot of effort into sourcing their animals and then spending a lot of time getting their setup. I'd say when I first started breeding lizards, period, the majority of people who bought from me were brand new first time pet owners. And they're like, okay, great. I'm just going to get a cage, put it in a box, the whole thing. And they saw reptiles almost like a toy. And it doesn't mean it's terribly bad. They weren't always taking poor care of them, but it was not the same. Whereas now I see a huge percentage of people who come to me with very elaborate designs ahead of time, having done a great deal of research, having spent their time really thinking about what they want, and then seeking out specifically captive bred, finding me, you know what I mean? Like the whole thing. So but I'm guessing some of that is a bit of an echo chamber for me because just there's not a lot of people who breed Euros. So if they get interested in Euros, they'll have a tendency to find me, So there's probably some bit of that's playing into my perceptions. But yeah, it's been different. Been big change in customer base,
Yeah. And with, assuming when you first started, it was majority imports, right?
Oh, it still is. Yeah.
It still is.
Even now, yeah, I would say 90% of, it used to be like almost 100%, like as close as you can get to 100% of the Euros you found were imports, the vast majority of them for a long time. And I think now it's probably still in the 90s, but like maybe 90% of the Euros you see in the trade are wild caught. They're imports, but you're getting more and more people now, thankfully. There's a lot of people following some of the instruction I've put out there, some people following instruction that others have put out there that's leading to varying, both of them are leading to varying degrees of success, kind of across the board. So there's, you're going to see probably this and next year in particular, like a lot more people produce them, but it'll be for the first time, really, we've had lots of, there's always been like anywhere between 1 to 3 people producing them on some level for the last 20, 30 years. Right. But in terms of how many, how consistently, what numbers they're talking about, it might have just been a matter of one clutch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
it's really variable what I mean by people producing them with regularity, right? So that's been going on. There's always been somebody doing it for probably 30 years, but
it's just the quantity of how many people are actually doing it.
Yeah. Now you see a little bit more of of like some of the hobbyists who bought their babies like 5-6 years ago. Now they're starting to see some good results like this year, last year, and then next year, So, and that's really good to see, because you got to have more people. You got to have lots of people having success. You don't want it to be something where people don't have access to it on some level.
Yeah. And where are your Euromastyx originally from?
They range from North Africa in like Morocco across to the Mideast, straight through Saudi Arabia and into Pakistan and India, where they turn into Sara, which used to be classified as Euromastyx, but then they split them off based on some morphology and phylogenetic data. So so it's that whole range. They have a huge range, huge range. And it may, there's something like, depending on how you look at the classification between, like species, subspecies, how up to date the classification is, you could have anywhere from 16 to 20 different distinct species and subspecies across that range. But almost all of them have huge native ranges, just like massive land mass where they range across, So it's probably in the future bound to be more subdivision there, and especially with more phylogenetic data from different places and different localities, different regions where we haven't seen the Euromastyx before. There's going to be a lot. So I'm sure.
Yeah. And that's interesting when there's such a unique animal and very niche still in the reptile world, where if you start breeding and following that trend of separation of subspecies and all that stuff, coming down the pipeline, with them, has there been ever talks about limiting imports from those countries that they're from?
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. I am familiar with like maybe 2 or 3 people who over the last 10 years have asked me for some of my input and information about like the animals I have and how I find them, to help get the guy was basically, they were collecting information to make a report, right? Gotcha. To sort of submit information to CITES to say like, hey, these things are hitting the quotas that are reported for these export countries don't match up with what's landing. Like what's landing is tens of thousands of more animals than the quota is supposed to allow, and they're just getting here.
Oh, wow.
So that was specifically with regard to Euromastyx J-Rai, which is the Nigerian Euromastyx. That's probably the most commonly imported ones. But there have been people who have done the same thing for others. Euromastyx have always been, a lot of them have been kind of on that border between some of, in terms of their CITES status, right? So they're pretty different. But there's, I'm sure, especially, part of the problem is that Euromastyx all come from conflict zones, right? Half of the places they originate from are fail states. Half of them, even if they're not a fail state, have a lot of, warfare and it's dangerous. Dangerous, right? So it's harder for people to go visit those places just to collect some lizards. It would make the price kind of prohibitive sometimes. So that's one of the other contributing factors to their,
why there's so many too being export, because it's got to be, there is some kind of income for those people too as well.
Yep. And if the juice isn't worth the squeeze, people aren't going to go catch lizards. So there's lots of places where we just won't see them anymore, just for one reason or another, or at least not for 30 years or something, so it's interesting. There's some I wish we could still get. Like I'd love to have been able to get my hands on some Euromastyx Mekfedieni, which is Somali Euromastyx, and there's a few others like the Omani Bentai, or there's just a handful where it's like, boy, we really missed the boat on that one. Wish somebody would have produced those, whatever it may be. That doesn't really, it's a roundabout way to answer your question.
Yeah, no, man. And it's important information that we get out to people, even people that are just looking to get a pet and stuff like that. Why? It's important to, support captive bred stuff. I'm a firm believer of conservation and captive breeding.
Mhm.
Eventually, we're gonna be the ones that are holding the line when of the species that we're working with and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, so I always tell people, in that show, I was just telling you backstage, the last show I vended, or the show before that,
Mhm.
somebody came and asked for a captive bred Euromastyx, and your name came up
Mhm.
by the other vendor that was vending next to me. And I think 2 shows before that, a lady that had bought a hog nose for me was also looking for a Euromastyx for her
Mhm.
son or daughter. And I think I sent you their information, or I
So,
sent your information to them.
yep.
And it was because they had gotten one from show, and it was probably imported, and it
Yep.
went downhill.
Yep.
Um, you
That's
know,
the tale as old as time, bro. Beauty and the Beast.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
And I explained to that when she told me what happened. I explained to her the reason why this could have happened, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of imports and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And just people aren't aware of what they're seeing at a local reptile show, or some other, even national reptile shows,
Yeah.
that these animals are imported. What major issues are you seeing with imported animals and stuff like that?
Oh man. I mean, you name it, it comes up, right? So with the imported stuff, you can have everything from physical injury to internal to external parasites to fungal infections to respiratory infections to systemic infections to, I mean, there's
Yeah.
so many things that can come up. They don't necessarily always come up.
Hmm.
You can also find totally healthy imports.
Yeah.
That's possible too. But generally speaking, the odds of you having an animal that either is sick or has some problem or has been exposed to some problem is quite high, right?
Yeah. For sure.
Um, so it's a bummer, but that's how it kind of starts. And
Hmm.
the story you just mentioned is the one that happens most of the time. People lose, they come to me. I get a lot of new customers who unfortunately had the sad experience of buying an import and having stuff go wrong,
Hmm.
not being able to get any help from the people who they bought it from, or whatever it is, and then they come to me, and because they were still committed. I mean, the thing I think about all the time is like how many people bought a Euromastyx at a show who decided it was just not worth it, not worth their time, and never came back to buy another. You know what I mean? Or never
Yep.
had the opportunity to try it right for the first time. I think about that a lot. But yeah, it happens all too frequently. And then usually with those people the ones who had the people who had like a really bad experience with a show wild caught lizard, or the people who got scammed by some other seller or some fake profile online, or who were mistreated by a
Yeah.
different seller who wasn't living up to the standards that caring for living creatures demands. All of those people I tend to give a lot of special extra treatment to. So I have a tendency to relate to those people because I've been on the other end of it and I see it happen. And when I see it happen, it drives me crazy. So I usually give those people a lot of time. Sometimes I give them big discounts on the
Hmm.
animals. I've given people animals for free just because they've been scammed by somebody else or whatever, because I just don't. I don't want that to be the last experience they had in herpetoculture,
Yeah.
So I do a lot of that stuff, and a lot of what you just mentioned is just something I see constantly. So
Yeah.
tough to
Yeah,
find.
man. That's a, like, an important part. I even get it with the hog nose, even the popularity of hog nose. At shows, a lot of people come by and tell me, "Man, I wish I could own a hog nose." And why not? They're just troublesome steaks. They don't eat, and then
Sure.
this, this, that. And I don't fight the import and wild caught battle, but I do fight the selling unestablished hatchlings.
Sure.
And that's where a lot of downfalls happen too, because these hatchlings, some are tough eaters, you know
Sure. I mean, they
and
want to eat toads, man.
yeah, they
You know.
want, they're naturally eating amphibians and toads and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
if they're
Hogs.
not properly,
I'm from where hognose are wild.
yeah, man.
I go
Yep.
find them here all the time, and the toads
Yeah.
they're eating and all that stuff. And oh, I wanted to say this actually when you brought me on first. Your
Mhm.
sponsor, Sea Serpents, like I have 2 or 3 pieces from him,
That's great.
incubators, and I have one
Yeah.
rack for baby geckos
Yeah,
that I
man.
use. Makes great stuff, but yeah, I mean, so the hog nose you mentioned, or hogs are great, but like the reality is we are like, it doesn't matter what animal you're selling. Okay. Like it could be a fresh batch of wild caught, whatever, or a fresh batch of stuff you hatched. And it could be super common. It could be super rare. It could be super expensive. It could be super cheap. It doesn't matter. All of them deserve a baseline level of like humane existence,
Correct.
And unfortunately, like you have to push for what you want, right? You have to vote with your dollars. So the more of us that, direct people to these wholesalers and importers, exporters, which like, look, again, necessary.
Yeah.
Like all of my stuff, all of my original breeders, they were imported from the wild, right?
Yeah.
So like that's a thing. But if that's the case, like we should really like, we should be following a completely different ethos that it's hard to hold people to account on, it would be a totally different ball game, right? Like it's all because, people make the argument about numbers. Oh, it's a numbers game. In order to make it viable, you have to get in a lot for very cheap and blah, 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 blah. It's like, I don't think that's true at all.
Yeah.
It's completely nonsense. There's no reason you can't take your time, source a small number of animals, ensure that they're treated well on their way here, get them here, set them up, establish enough of them with enough of your time and money, and charge 10 grand a pair, dude.
Yep.
Charge
People will pay for it.
People will pay for it. People will pay for it. You just fucking do it. Like it's not that hard. And I get it, like business models and how do you scale and all that stuff. There's nothing about scaling any of this kind of business that it precludes treating them well and taking it seriously. There's nothing. Yep. This is a myth that people will tell you if they ever do. Yep. Hopefully they don't, but if they do, it's a lie.
Yeah, man. And it's interesting you say that because talking about making this a business. When I first started doing this, I was like, oh, let me take a business course online and stuff like that. And one of the biggest things was like, you need to figure out how to scale your business, and for retail commerce, for stuff that it's not live animals, it's easy. It's not easy, but there's a plan. You could put a plan in place and do it. But I took the course, but through that whole course, I couldn't figure out. I was like, well, I can do this and this and that. But then the dilemma always came about where they're live animals. Nothing is guaranteed with them.
Yep.
You want to give them the best care that you can possible within captivity, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's realistically, if you're gonna do the best for the animal and produce amazing animals, there is no scaling it. Especially if you're a 1-2-man show.
I disagree. I disagree. Yeah, I think you can definitely scale it. It's just, the reality is if you're doing any kind of business where ethics are involved,
correct.
What you're doing is you're making trade-offs the whole time. Okay. So you are making a decision about how large you make your cages versus how much you feed versus what you feed versus where do you find your food versus what do you pay for lighting and how do you use your lighting. All of that's fine, but there's no reason theoretically that you couldn't meet all of those ethical demands and concerns and save money and do things well enough to where you can scale. This is a matter of creativity, not a prohibitive boundary put in place by ethics, because there should theoretically be no upper limit to what your ethics can accommodate, right?
Yeah.
Like, you should be able, like, and I mean that by not flexing your ethics at all. I mean, by being like realistic and honest about what you're doing. I think most of it has to do with your time horizons. Like we're open to the idea that we think about a herpetocultural business as something slightly different from traditional business, but we feel like we still need to get the education because there's a lot of business administration that goes into running a business like this, which is fine. And you should get versed in it and you should understand it. Right. But the reality is herpetoculture is a complete Wild West. There's no playbook for how to do this. There's not that many people who have done it. Now, there are a lot of professional herpetoculturists, but none of them have written a book on how to do it. None of them have talked to anybody else about exactly how to do it. Everyone has pretty much figured out how to do it on their own, right? And they tend to be self-taught, somewhat ambitious, sometimes willing to bend and break the rules, right? This is, to me, that sounds like any other industrious entrepreneur in any industry, right? So if we can hold larger organizations to ethical account, which we should, then there's no reason you can't scale a herpetocultural endeavor and not sacrifice on your ethics. You just have to be willing to flex on different parts of what makes your business viable. It's probably not the kind of thing you should rely on a year-to-year basis if you're worried about that aspect of it, because you're going to have, no matter what you do, if you're a halfway ethical person at all, you will have to make decisions about not doing things and not breeding things and not selling things when you have to, when you feel like you have to, because there's money pressuring you to do it.
Correct.
But you have to be willing to say no and go pick up another job until you have enough money to get through to the next one. And then eventually you can scale to a point where, as long as you keep the rest of your life in plain focused view, you can do it and make a living. It's okay. And you don't have to go crazy in order to do it. Right. So you don't have to, in terms of numbers and scalation.
Yeah.
But if you wished, I think there's a way to do it. I think there's a way to make it even much larger than a simple home business. I don't think one person can do it, you know, but also, like, realistically speaking, the business model of herpetoculture is changing, you know, like when I first started, there were people who had businesses importing and exporting, people who had businesses producing and selling, and then people who had businesses breeding, buying wholesale and then selling in their shop, right?
Yeah.
These were the models that I saw for what it meant to be a business person in herpetoculture. But now we have a completely different landscape, because we have social media and YouTube, and we have all these things that we're something completely different now, you know? And as a result, it's even harder for an entrepreneur in herpetoculture to advance in some way, because, like, choosing where you're going to go is really challenging, you know? So you have to make a choice about what you want to do and then just plug away at it and hope it works, you know, but it might not. And you gotta be good at it. Right. So it's really hard, because it's more challenging just to be a simple producer. You know, you're dealing with scams out in the world that use your photos to sell nothing and scam people for money. You have various regulatory bodies that you have to sort of try to understand how to navigate so you don't break laws, right? So you do the right thing. You know, I have to get licensed here in Colorado. There's certain states I can't ship to, blah, 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 right? So there's lots of stuff like that, right? However, there's never been like a better time to get into this world if you want to make it a living. There's never been a better time, because if you're interested in something, you can produce it, you can put out information about it, you can share it, show it for how cool it is, because the odds are, if you like it, there's somebody else out there that likes it too, you know? So you just got to find those people. That's not that hard. Just put it out there. People will find you, you know, just do it because you like it. So there's a lot more opportunity than there's ever been. And the landscape looks totally different. And it kind of trips me out. Like, it's so weird, you know, because of how different herpetoculture looks from when I started. And I'm not old, man. I'm 38, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not an old man. I'm still quite young.
Yeah.
And so the fact that it looks so different just from when I got into it, you know, like, imagine what it's going to look like in 30, 40 more years. It's going to be nuts, man.
Yeah. You know, and you getting back into it, let's say 20 years ago, right? In high school, let's say you were 18. Have you seen in the last like 5 years that the upward of like people having just reptiles as pet, how much like exponentially has grown?
Oh yeah. It's COVID, man. COVID did
Yeah.
it. COVID did it. I mean, it was a nightmare and a fucking disaster, but like I think so when it happened, I remember there were people who were like kind of celebrating a little bit, right? They were like, yes, dude, so many people are going to buy pets because they're going to have all this spare time. And like, people were right.
Yeah.
And then there were a group of people who were like, yeah, but what's going to happen when all of them have to go back to work and they got to get rid of their pets? and they were also right, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
But now it's looking like there's this other trend happening where it's like, oh, well, maybe this brought like a lot more people into herpetoculture. You know what I mean? Just period. Like it
Yeah,
just more
staying
people.
the numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like more people putting eyes on it, more people paying attention to it. And, you know, you couple that with just the exposure of it. Well, okay, cool. Maybe it's like a good thing. You know, this could be really good. Because the more people doing this, the better. Right.
Correct. Yep.
You know, I think it's
yeah, because the more people doing it, it's gonna exposure to just the reptiles in general. You know, more studies eventually will pop up, more you know, work into like the veterinary field, all that stuff, and the medicine of them. You know, and you know, there'll be some issues that we deal with reptiles nowadays that maybe in 10 years we're not gonna have to deal with them because we've
for sure.
Educational what's it called, like colleges and stuff like that scientists have put information into it.
Yep.
And stuff like that to
I mean, there's going to just be a lot more. It's going to be a lot more citizen science. You know, it's just going to be some kid somewhere who loves red-eyed crocodile skinks and just it's like, all right, fuck it, I'm going to breed 1 million of these. You know what I mean? How do you do it? How do you do it well? How do you do it ethically? Turns out you hatch a white one and things go weird. You know what I mean? Like it's not going to take much. So I'm much more interested in the ways that the future interconnected world is just going to unleash more creativity because more people will be doing these cool things. You know, it's just like as it stands now, like herpetoculture is a big global industry, but it's tiny percentage of the global population. You know, like tiny. Well, imagine when we get to a point where herpetocultural market adoption looks like cats or dogs, even birds. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, that's going to be wild to think about.
It's going to be crazy.
There's going to be
so many people doing stuff and so many creative, interesting things happening in this world. Like we are in the absolutely infant days of herpetoculture, my friend, like really early. Like it's a weird time to be doing what we do.
And you know, and that's an interesting statement you're saying there, because to think about, you know, 20 years ago, of those guys that were bringing all these import animals, you know, ball pythons, Euros, everything, right? Starting the baseline of that. And when we look back now, 20 years, where we're gonna, you know, the future is just gonna be crazy. You know, like you're saying, we're still so early.
It's not. We don't even have like, you know, we barely have scenes in movies where somebody's got a pet lizard. Barely. You know what I mean? Like it's only going to take one of these insane Justin Biebers who happens to have a pet gecko. You know what I mean? It's gonna happen, you know, like something weird's gonna happen. Somebody's gonna get Lady Gaga's gonna get a horned lizard or some crap. You know what I mean? And everyone's going to lose their minds. And we're going to have like, I mean, who knows? But maybe not that. Maybe don't do that. But well, I'm just saying, my point is really just to emphasize the fact that we need more people doing this really seriously and taking it really, really seriously. You know, because if like I don't. Okay, let me try this. Let me try this and see how this works out. Hopefully I don't end up putting my foot in my mouth or something, but like, I don't know about you, but I kind of feel a little sheepish sometimes about letting people know what I do for a living. Like it's not necessarily culturally looked at as, you know, in the same, sometimes in like the broader culture, people look at you and they're going to think like, is this guy like, are you like Tiger King light, you know, like, and I'm just like, nah. Like, you know, I have to kind of push back on that side of it. Like so much of our trade is wrapped up in like the drug world, you know, back in the day. You know, you got your Joe Exotics making us look terrible. Like, I think what we really need, like what herpetoculture needs desperately, is like a lot of people who are doing everything in their power to show it in a good light in every aspect of their life. You know, like I run a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai academy as a day job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I don't have to do it. I do it because I love that and I want to be there. Like Jiu-Jitsu's a passion. That's what I want to do forever. But like, I talk to everybody there. They all know what I do. You know, like all of them know what I do. And, you know, the number of people who've come out of the woodwork in terms of the membership and been like, you know, I have a tortoise, you know, and I'm like, oh, my man, you know, like I get to talk to another person. I'm like, oh, you get it, you know, but like the number of people who have had come over to my house who were expecting like a hamster wheel in the corner or like a stinky bunny cage in the basement, you know what I mean? And you get to show them this other thing. We need a lot of people doing that because the reality is this is a great thing. There's a lot of value that this offers to the world, psychologically, spiritually, probably scientifically, that we won't know until, you know,
years from now. Yeah.
Like, you know, we have that. What is it? Isn't it Ozempic that came from a Gila monster?
Yep. Yeah.
Crazy. Like just imagine if more of that, you know, like crazy stuff like that. Like Reptile, people have to do this, you know, and like so many people are like more shy, you know, like understandably, because usually if you're into reptiles, you're either like kind of weird, maybe you're on the spectrum, maybe you are like bullied a lot and you don't want to socialize, you know, maybe you don't want to do that. And I say that as that's me. I'm talking about me, all of those things. Those are all me. So, just for the record. But like, you know, you have to step outside of that because we just need more people talking about it, you know?
I agree, man. Yeah. You know, and it's crazy because like, you know, I'm 36, so we're around the same age and stuff like that. And sometimes, like you said, sitting in a circle of professional friends, what people call professional, right? Like doctors, accountants, lawyers, stuff like that. It's like, what do you do? I read reptiles, man. You know,
I have lizards in the basement, you know, you know, but it's like, the cool thing is, like, one thing I tell all of my coworkers and my friends out in the world, like, and I want to make a distinction here just for the record. Like, if someone works for me at the Jiu-Jitsu Academy and they have kids and they ever want, like, they ask, like, do you ever let people come over, like, with kids and see your stuff? I'm like, hell yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. I want every one of those kids that comes through here to be so stoked on what they see, you know, and show them that, like, hey, you have a dog, you have a cat, like, you can do the same thing with this. You can do exactly the same thing. Now you have to learn about them because they're a different thing. It's a different kind of consciousness, but that's really good for you to learn about, right? So I let that happen all the time. And one thing I don't want that to be construed with is, like, people ask me if they can visit my place all the time. And I, just for the sake, it's like, this is my home. You know, like, I don't want a lot of people knowing where I live, right? So, you know, not because of anything other than it just makes me feel uncomfortable. Like,
your privacy, for sure, man.
You know what I mean? Like, or my kid, right? I have one kid, but he lives here, so so it's like, it's challenging, you know, because you want to be open, but you don't want to be so open that it could make things weird, right? Or you know, so anyway, long and the short of it is, like, more people need to just put out what they're doing and talk about it in a very positive, like, I love this kind of way. And it probably has to steer away from, like, sensationalist stuff, you know, and, like, I know that that's going to catch a wave, but, like, that's fine. Let a video of you nearly getting bitten in the face by a retic go viral. Let it happen. Fine. But for God's sake, make sure when that person dives further in that they see cool, impressive stuff with good people making good decisions and really lifting this whole thing up. Because otherwise, you know,
providing that correct information for that newbie, right?
It's don't make us look like jackasses. Make us look good, because most of us are very good people. We're just here trying to enjoy something we love.
And you see, and that's why I think sometimes we do like, you know, talk about, like, telling people that what you do, because the association that comes with it sometimes, right? But then the other side of the coin is, like, when I do say that, you know, people get very intrigued about it, right? Like you know, like, oh man, that's so cool. Like, I have a dad, every time I see him when I go pick up my daughter, or there's some school event, he's like, how's the snakes, man? And and he's like, you know, and he's like, man, he goes, my job is boarding. I just do coding. Stuff,
dude,
you know?
I know. And the number of people who, like, you know, the way that conversation goes is so funny. because it's always like, they're like, oh, what do you, what do you do? And I'm like, whatever it is. Like, obviously the people at the Jiu-Jitsu Academy, they're like, oh, he does Jiu-Jitsu. He teaches Jiu-Jitsu and runs the academy. Sure. But everybody there knows I have reptiles.
Yep.
And so they're always like, you got to ask him about his lizards, and then like, when I'm out and about and when people ask me what I do, usually the first thing I say is I breed reptiles, like it depends on the crowd I'm in, right? Sometimes I'm like, oh, I manage a Jiu-Jitsu Academy. And then sometimes it's, I breed reptiles. Just depends on what crowd I'm in, what kind of reception I think I'm going to get. You know what I mean? But like,
when if somebody asks you, what do you do for business? What's your main business? What first comes to your mind?
Reptiles,
reptiles, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Jiu-Jitsu, the Jiu-Jitsu stuff, Jiu-Jitsu for me is like a purpose. Like that's, I do that as a ritual. Like that's something I do to, as best I can, connect with who I am as a person. You know what I mean? Like that's what's important to me. Yes, it is a business, and yes, I teach, and yes, I used to compete, and I have students who compete, and there's like a big methodological part to what I do on that front. But the reality is, like, that's the thing. I mean, I guess it's also true about the reptiles. Like, both things would qualify as something that I feel is a purpose. And this is the thing that gives me meaning in life and makes me feel like I'm doing good in the world and makes me feel like I'm connected to who I am as a person, to something in my ancestry, because clearly if I didn't have an ancestor who was into these things that I do, it wouldn't make any sense that I do them. You know what I mean? Man. So I see it as very devotional, very spiritual, and very rigorous, and I chalk some of that vocabulary up to Roy, my podcast co-host. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, man. I'm gonna share this because talking about like sharing what you do to jiu-jitsu and stuff. We're talking backstage. Me and my family also do jiu-jitsu, and the owner of my gym started making like those anime pictures of people and stuff like that. And this is what he made for me, right? So like, it's cool. Like,
that's great.
It's also cool to see like when people think about you, they associate you with, associate me with reptiles and snakes.
Yeah.
So when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's pretty funny. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. Those AI pictures are a trip, I'll tell you.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, it's cool. And I think like we should be more comfortable, more okay and I don't think it's for us, but I think it's society accepting it that this is what we do, right?
Yeah.
And not have, because I think we still, especially the generation of our parents and their parents, stuff like that, there's still a lot of stigma that reptiles, especially snakes, that are evil, they're bad, all that stuff.
Well, and like, let's be real, some of that stigma was totally justified. Like,
yeah, back then there's no venom, anti-venom, none of that stuff.
Yeah, crazy stuff. People have done some not good things, right? So some of that stigma is totally deserved. But in order to work past it, we have to have people talking about this in a way that's more meaningful. I feel like there are aspects of herpetoculture that people kind of take for granted and treat as like just a normal everyday thing that shouldn't be. You shouldn't. There's why is everybody like just putting up with this kind of behind the scenes, or like why would you let this slide by and not let everyone know?
Yeah.
And sure, like I get it. Like on the one hand, I don't necessarily believe in like the call out thing. Like I don't really think the move is to like get on a podcast and talk about people that you don't like, right? Like I did that once before and that was really stupid. I shouldn't have done it. But that's not really the move. What I'm talking about is like setting an example, like set a good example, period.
Yep.
Right? Like just, take your animal to the vet when you have to, right? Try to not be cringe. Like, God damn, just try not to be cringe. Like, I get it. Yeah. You got to play into that algorithm and you got to put a video and say, you won't believe what this lizard did, or like, what? Fine. I get it. But just don't, just be authentic, right? Just shut up and be real. Like that's kind of what I'm getting. Just chill and be
man.
Be authentic.
Yeah, be true to yourself and be true to the animals you keep, because eventually that catches up to you.
Yeah.
You can't put that charade up forever and stuff like that.
Well, and what do you want people to know? How do you want people, like, this is something that, if you look at any other business, like literally any other business, the whole thing is like, what does the first impression mean? The first impression means everything in a lot of these other businesses, right? So like if so many other businesses take it for granted as an absolute fundamental truth, you should feel the same way about your herpetocultural endeavors. Like, the first impression of what people get from you matters, right? And so, yeah, some of that is appealing to people, and some of that is selecting for the people that you don't want to pay attention to what you're doing, right? And so that looks like just doing what you think is the right thing. So, you know, not everything I do is the most accessible thing. I'm not, my goal isn't like the customer is always right? It's, I'm going to have an interaction with this person. And if they strike me as the kind of person that maybe this probably isn't the right pet for, right? Like, for one reason or another, this might not be the right pet for you. So I don't lie to you. I don't care if you buy or not. Like, I mean, yeah, sure. It's like, it's a business. You got to sell animals, right? But again, as I said before, your ethics don't have to be compromised.
Not being one of those, used car salesmen. I always say, that it's because it's either gonna, like we were talking about earlier, gonna push the person away, and it's gonna come back to bite you in the ass eventually too.
Yeah. Well, it also means like not being like, if you're getting the impression, because if you talk with enough people who are interested in your animals, eventually you encounter people who like clearly are talking to you and clearly the animal is not for them, right? And this is not a judgment. Just to be clear, this is not a judgment, right? In the same way that jujitsu, like what I do, jujitsu is not for everyone. Okay. Like, people will say, oh, jujitsu is for everybody. And on a certain level, anyone can do jujitsu. But the raw meat and potatoes of what it takes to actually get proficient at jujitsu or boxing or herpetoculture, not everyone is prepared for that kind of engagement. And that doesn't mean that it's because they're not as good or that they're not capable. It, like, some of it's timing. I started jiu-jitsu. The first time I ever took a jiu-jitsu class was when I was 16 years old. And I was like, no, I can't do this. I don't like this at all. I didn't like it. And then it was years later when I was 19, when I was like, oh man, actually I should get back to it. And when I tried it then it took off, and I loved it forever. I literally did one class at 16 and decided it was not for me. Okay. Yeah. But it didn't mean that jiu-jitsu wasn't for me. It's that I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready for it at that time. Or like, maybe even in this lifetime, maybe it wasn't for me in this life. Right. That's fine. Right. But like, you have to be honest about that. So if you get a person who comes to you and you can tell that they're not, if this feels to you more like an impulse buy, and if this feels to you like the person is simply captivated by a very colorful lizard on the page that they see, but they're not necessarily prepared for what it means to care for that animal, well, you should probably pry more. You should probably ask some more questions and be willing to tell the person, like, with all due respect, I don't think this is for you. If you feel differently, please take some time to read my care information and then come back to me and say, I still am serious. I want the animal. Let's do it. Yeah. Okay, fine. Now we can talk about it because you've read through it and we've talked about it and you know what you're getting into, right? But if most of the time when I get this feeling and I say, hey, can you read have you kept a Euro before? Have you kept a reptile before? Do you know what this looks like? If not, please, can you read this? Come back to me. And most of the time, those people don't come back. Yeah. And sometimes they do. And when they do, they prove me wrong. And they say, no, you thought I was just impulse buying. This is like one of the most meaningful things I've ever done. I had a guy at the last expo. Like, I don't normally vend shows, but I've been doing a couple of local ones. And I had a gentleman who, him and his, I don't know if they were married or just dating or whatever, him and his lady, they came to my table and they saw the Euros and they hadn't owned reptiles before, but they ended up buying a Euro at the show, showing me that they were clearly dedicated and like getting all the information from me, setting it up exactly as I told them to. And now they're getting another one because they want to try breeding them. Like, that's much more, that's okay. I will foster that for sure. Yeah. Or the kid who walked by the table, who like was like leaning over and he had like this Bass Pro hat shop on. He was like leaning over and he was looking and he goes, oh, Xenogama Taylori. And this kid was like 10, like, oh, sorry. Yeah. So he was like 10 years old. And I was like, oh, this kid is 10 years old, knows what a Xenogama taylorii is. I will talk to you. Like I'm going to, in 20 years, I'm going to hear about you. I can tell, because you're on, right? So that's fine. But you have to be willing to say no. I don't need to make this sale. Yeah. It's more important to me that the animal goes to someone I'm more inclined to trust, that they're going to like take the responsibility seriously, and I'm going to politely decline. And if you don't like me for that, okay, fine.
That's fine.
I literally don't think about you, Yeah. Like it's I just
and that's one thing too, like at shows, right? You get, I need to do more research. And when people tell me that, go ahead, man.
That's the right answer.
That's the best thing to do.
That's the right answer.
I have this little quick posters, like what's it called? Like poster size mailer thing that has a quick like guideline, real quick, temps, sizes, and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then I always tell them, it's like, look, I have a 6-page guideline. If you really want to get deep into it, I'll email it to you.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, sure.
And then I've had it, maybe not the next show, but a year later, they come back.
Yep.
Hey man, I'm ready now. I did all the research and that. Cool.
Yeah. That's the thing. That exact thing is the kind of thing that gives me hope about all of this. Mm-hmm. Because that's way more common than what I normally see. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, not normally. That's not true. That's also not true. Like most of the people who buy from you are great people, right? Mm-hmm. Like I have so many ongoing relationships where I communicate with, dozens and dozens of people who have bought from me. Yeah. And it's like they just want to know more. They're trying to make sure they do the best for their animal, and some of them are breeding, some of them are not. Like it's awesome. I love that. Like I have people pop out of the woodwork who say, I bought this Euro from you 8 years ago, 9 years ago. And it's like, boom, whoa, that thing looks crazy. Like very good, like that's cool. That's one of the coolest things to see.
Yeah. And that makes the work that you put into it worth it, right? Oh, especially when you get those those back, hey, I still have this animal, or this animal's been growing great for me and stuff like that.
Well, I should also say, at the risk of sounding totally selfish and arrogant, I would do this even if nobody ever bought any. I think this is great. Like, I don't care. Like, buy them or don't. More for me if you don't. Like, it's fun. Like, please don't get it twisted. Like, it's a business. You got to sell sometimes, and I get it. Sure. That's how it is, but it's fine. I'll keep all of them. No big deal. Mm-hmm. My wife will keep it. I will keep them all.
Yeah, man. No, and that's the true passion of what we do, right? Yeah. And if you do have the passions, you're gonna push through the hard times, the difficult times, because same thing. It's not linear. It's not all daisies and roses and stuff like that, right?
No. It's a very cyclical. Like this was true 40 years ago. If you want to do this, you have to adapt. Mm-hmm. But it's true now. If you want to do this, you have to adapt. Like it's hard work. Like I was recently listening to an interview with the jiu-jitsu coach Lachlan Giles, and most people won't know who he is, right? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Probably not. If you like jiu-jitsu, you probably know who he is. Anyway, he was talking about like the odds of becoming a jiu-jitsu athlete and making it a business, and how hard that is, how hard it is to make a living off jiu-jitsu in particular. It's hard enough to do MMA. Jiu-jitsu is harder because it's a smaller market, and he got emotional, he was like, it's hard. Like his voice cracked when he said that. And I was like, oh, like it hit. And I was like, wow, this guy, that's 100% true. Like I felt that, cause I did that too. I never got to the level he did. I mean, he's like a world-class, incredible player. I'm not, right? I'm just a guy who trains jiu-jitsu, but this feels similar to that. It's like, this is hard. This is really, really hard to do, which is why more people should do it, right? Because it's difficult, and you should try to do hard things. And this is very cool, very worthy of doing. And it doesn't matter what you work with. It doesn't matter. And I don't care if it's a leopard gecko or a bearded dragon or a Borneo earless monitor or a pygmy chameleon, or I don't care. Like whatever you do, it should be difficult. And if it's not, you're probably not trying hard enough,
Yeah. And evolving within herpetoculture too, because I've got friends that have been doing ball pythons for 20 years, right? And the ball python is the base of our industry.
One of
But
them.
the last couple of years, they've added different species, and what comes out of their mouth now is just like, man, this is making me really like fall back in love
Totally.
with reptiles. The making my wheels turn, really sit down and view stuff. How
Yep.
different things from ball pythons.
Yeah.
Um,
Totally.
so it's interesting about that too. Like you can keep evolving either within your species or different species and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, so you choose a hard path one way or the other, right? So like, I work with stuff that, I don't just have rare things. I have African fat-tailed geckos. You know what I mean? It's like the easiest gecko on earth to keep and breed, right?
Yeah.
Like, just because it's easy to do doesn't mean you can't like do really damn good at it. Like you can, and not just good at it, but like there's more than one place you can go get a burger. There's more than one place you can get a golden retriever. There's more than one place you can go get a basking light. There's more than one place you can go get feeders. You know what I mean? So, and there's reasons to do different ones all the time. Like there's no reason this is the only feeder you feed in it. There's no universe for that, right? You shouldn't do it, right? And so your ability to what did the guy there's a gentleman I pay attention to, his name's Seth Godin. He's like a pretty well-known blogger and designer and just all around intelligent human being and interesting person. And he said he talks about this thing, minimum viable audience, all the time. Right. So like, I don't care if what you're breeding is albino leopard geckos, which you can buy for $20. There's like a way to do that well and to set a good standard and to like set an example for what that can be. And so to make it challenging, the challenge is not to breed an albino leopard gecko. The challenge is to how do you give someone an entirely unique experience by not just buying from you, but having a profound relationship with the animal that they got from you. Yeah. Like how do you make that interesting? And I think this is sort of what the like early AKC and like people who are interested in reptiles and use phrases like dam and sire and all this stuff. It's an attempt to like appeal to knowing that your animal came from like an interesting lineage or like a cool breeder or like whatever it is, but it has to go further than that. Like when I bought my golden retriever from a breeder, it wasn't just that she is really well bred and has like a great lineage and all this other stuff. It's also that like she was trained in advance of like, she never had she had one accident in the house as a puppy. She peed once because the breeder had potty trained the puppies before they ever left. Jesus, like what talk about a 10x to your experience. Yeah. Just by potty training the dog. Okay, well, how do you do that with an animal? Like with a reptile. Okay, well, you tell me, there's a lot you can do. So that's where that kind of thing, like what are you really getting people? Like what are you sending their way? And it's gotta be cool, man. It can't just be the same thing they can go and get anywhere else.
No, 100%. Yeah, you gotta set yourself apart in anything, right?
And everyone will play catch up to that because they should be like, that should be the point, is to like, the point is to do it so people love it and have fun and that they are as happy as you are, like that's the whole point. Otherwise, why do it?
Yeah, man. Yeah. Creating that experience for somebody else is very important. Yeah. And with that, it's like, if a customer is coming to you looking for a Euro, what is your sales pitch or your information you mainly give them?
So that depends a little bit on what it's hard to say. So it's very individualized. I don't have like a pitch. I don't like to systematize how I sell, like it just depends. Right. So some people, if it's like, I'll get kids who say, hey, like I want to get a Euro, but my mom doesn't want, my mom doesn't want to have to feed bugs to the lizard. I'm like, hey, I got great news for you. Euro, like Euros don't need them. Or like, I want to be able to go away on vacation and not have to get like board it or have someone come watch it. It's like, oh, a Euro or a gecko is probably the move, honestly, because you can set them up and they'll be fine for a while without you, you know. But usually the you know, because people will, I'd say a very, very, very common question I get is like, which species should I get? Right? Like, which one? I'm sold on a Euro, but I want a species. Like, which one should I do? And I'm like, I got nothing for you. It is about what you think is the most compelling, period. Like, if you like it, they all have the same potential to be a great pet, to be resilient and all of that. So just choose one that you like. If you like the way it looks, that's probably going to be a great Euro for you, because it's not about the species you buy. It's about the amount of work and the time you put into it. It doesn't matter if it's a desert iguana, a sandfish, and a Euromastyx, a Xenogama tailorite, chuck wallet. It does not matter. You will get out of that relationship what you put into it, you know? So it doesn't really matter which one you get. Just get something that you like and keep it well and treat it well. And maybe it takes 2 days for it to be friendly with you, or maybe it takes 2 years. But I bet you if it takes 2 years, you're going to have a very, very different relationship to that animal than you would if it was friendly from the jump.
Yeah.
You have a totally different relationship. And that's an earned, challenging relationship to foster. This is like the difference between getting a dog and expecting it to know everything it's supposed to do, and getting a dog and spending the first 2 years of its life working with it every single day, 7 days a week, building a relationship, training and working with that dog. That's how you get like the puppy love of your life, is by doing it that way, not by getting a dog and hoping like, it's a dog, they do it. It's not how it goes. You
got to earn it.
They're mirrors, bro. They're a mirror.
Yeah,
you just
man.
gotta put in the time.
Now, is there a question that you wish first-time buyers did ask, or ask more often?
Oh, that's a great question.
You know, because the basics, right? They'll ask you temperatures, humidity, and stuff like that. You know, is there like a part of like your Euro geek mind that's like, man, I want to talk more about this with these people?
Man, that one may have stumped me. I'm not sure. I haven't thought about that. I've had lots of interesting people come through.
Yeah.
You know, like I've had a lot of people who surprised me with their dedication, you know, like I've had, I think the closest thing that would stand out is like in the last 2 years, I've had a lot of people who came to me and were like, hey, my friend bought a Euro from me, or from you rather. Like my friend bought a Euromastyx from you, and I couldn't believe how cool it is. And she's taught me all about it, and I want one now. Like I've read everything you've put out. I feel ready. I've got a cage. Like, let me put down a deposit. I don't care how long I have to wait. I can't wait to get this animal. Like that person rules. Those are so interesting, because those are the kinds of people that are going to text me in 8 years with a picture of their animal.
For sure.
Those are really cool. Those ones are really, really interesting. Because that just sort of speaks to what it means to have someone who's like an advocate for the animals and will just show them off and show how cool they are. Is like they convince their friend. Like, because another example from jiu-jitsu is like, I've been doing jiu-jitsu 18 years. I don't think I've ever convinced anybody to do it. You know, like I'm not a good ambassador for jiu-jitsu. And like people don't look and think, I'll be like that guy. People are like, no, like I don't, I'm not doing it, you know, like if that's what happens, I don't want to be that. Right. So, I've never really convinced anybody to get a Euro, or to do jiu-jitsu, but I have convinced people that like a Euro is the right thing for them, or that a reptile is the right thing for them. Like, this is going to be great for you. Or like, I can tell based on who you are and like the way you're talking to me, like, oh, you're more interested. This will be great. Like, let me tell you, here's how it goes. And I just level with everybody. Like, I don't lie, you know, I don't try to, I don't even lie. I don't even like push the truth. You know, like if people are like, well, you know, really like level with me, what's like the maintenance like? And I'm like, all right, well, it's the initial setup is going to take you some time, but once you have everything set, it's cleaning shit a few times a week.
Yeah.
It's really not much. Like they'll take half the year off brumating. You won't have to do anything. You know, like that's pretty good. That's pretty good. You know?
Man,
it's a lot.
Brumation is a blessing.
Well, it's funny because like usually people struggle with brumation, because if you think about it, when you first do all your research, the all of the hallmark behavioral displays of brumation don't look like a healthy lizard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like unless you know, this all looks like this is wrong. He's losing weight. He's not eating. He's not basking. He's not going to the bathroom. It's all a problem. But you do it a bunch of times and you're like, yeah, this is what they do. This is okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is normal. But it's awesome because they take time where they don't even come out for months. And you're like, okay, bye. Cool. I'm gonna go to the mountains. Let's do it. You know, it's pretty cool. It's a nice thing to have, but it's scary. But the thing is, like, every animal has that. Like, every animal you keep is gonna have, it's gonna push the boundaries. So like I've said for a long time that with the Euromastyx, there's something about them that like I just feel like I kind of relate to. I don't know why. I don't know what that's about. I have no idea where that comes from. There's just something like, I just feel like I kind of get them. And obviously that just gets stronger the more time I spend with them. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I kind of get this Euro. I know what's going on, right? But like, I, over the last several years, have gotten into some tortoises, you know, and I keep some tortoises now. And I actually just produced my first hingeback tortoise. I hatched a Canixa Spectre, which is the first tortoise I've ever produced. It's the coolest thing I've ever seen. It's just rad, right? But the tortoises were a really tough learning curve for me. Like, they were really difficult. And some of it was just like that stress of not understanding this thing. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't understand you enough to feel like I can be as responsive as I need to. It's like, I watch the Euros and I like get them, you know, like I understand what they need. I know what they're doing. I mean, you know, obviously I'm learning things every day, but like, I feel like I get them. Yeah. But I don't feel that way about the tortoises still, you know? And so like learning about that other kind of being, like, what is it about you, your Umwelt, right? What makes you tick? What makes you are? What is it about your experience of the world makes you what you are, you know? And so that's been real hard. That's a hard thing. And that's not just my experience. That's the way anyone is when they first get a reptile pet. They are not used to like conceptually stepping into the body of another being, which is what it means to do this. You are like engaging with another kind of consciousness, mm-hmm. not to decode it, but to like and I mean this literally, to like step into that worldview and feel what it's like to be them. That's what you're doing, you know? And that's hard. That's really, that's an exercise in mental flexibility that's difficult, right? Yeah. And that's why it takes years. Like, I've hatched a tortoise and I still feel like I'm looking at a stranger. I'm like, I don't get you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what you're doing. You're eating, you're living, and you seem great, but what am I missing? You know? And that's hard. It's like really hard to do. So that's what we're always trying to help you. That's mostly what we're helping people with, is like, how do you don't need me to tell you how to do this. If you understand enough, you'll figure this out on your own.
Yeah, it's right. Like, simple thing is learning body behavior and stuff like that. You know, those signs and stuff, and that at some point just comes with time, right? And as time goes, you'll start learning this stuff. You know, like, one of my favorite things to do is sit here, turn the other way around, and just watch.
Yeah,
right. For sure. And you learn stuff all the time. You catch different things, and you know, you look at the animals like, I've never noticed this scale in this animal or something, right?
Yeah.
All that stuff is very interesting in that. With now, like, talking about what the Euros do, what's the average behavior of Euromastyx?
Oh man. Most of the time they're basking and foraging. The rest of the time they're hiding, conserving energy, relaxing. Mm-hmm. They're pretty cool. They're pretty good. They're like an active diurnal desert lizard. But of course, like any good diurnal desert lizard, they've managed their resources well, so they don't waste energy by being more active than they need. They're very good at conserving energy. You know, sometimes they can be very flighty if they're brand new wild caught. Most of the time with captive bred ones, long term, they're very, very relaxed and very responsive to their keepers. They love routine. Very expressive, like very intelligent, right? Like, all reptiles are intelligent, you know, but Euros are unique. Like, I keep iguanas too, you know. I have I've been keeping like green iguanas and cyclura my whole life, but Right now, the thing I'm most interested in are these San Esteban Island spiny-tailed iguanas, Tenosura tubuosa.
Yeah.
And that's like a different intellect. That's a totally different kind of creature than a Euromastyx. It's just like a different animal. They have a lot of overlaps, but that's like a different thing. That's a totally different thing, know? And a lot of that I'm sure has to do with them being like more, on average, being more predatory than a Euro, right? Euros are mostly grazing, occasionally eating a bug or two, but Tenosura, they'll like chase shit down and kill it, right? So it's a different animal. So, anyway, with Euros, they're just very unique, they're kind of a goofy mixture between like a tortoise, a panther chameleon, and a monitor lizard, some kind of goofy fusion of those three things.
They're interesting, man. And I don't have much experience of seeing like Euros at the shows and stuff like that. And I don't know anybody that I'm close with that has any either.
Sure.
But just the impressiveness of their colors, the way they look, their spiny tails and their body type, their head structure, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Very unique looking animals. And I see, why it catches the eye of many people.
Oh yeah. And they're super low maintenance, like I normally resist the sort of general cultural urge to compare them to bearded dragons and the way that you set them up. But I understand what people mean by that. If you think of like the base framework that you might think of for a bearded dragon, roughly 4x2x2 setup, high basking temperature, high UV, relatively dry climate. Yeah, you're pretty much on the money, right? But like a bearded dragon is just a completely different animal. So it's just it's not necessarily a fair comparison, right? Yeah. Euromastyx are very extreme. So they love super hot, super dry, sometimes, right? Because like a smart desert lizard seeks out water. Yeah. So to say that they love it dry is kind of a misnomer. But at any rate, they are just a very interesting, unique thing. They're again very extreme. They're a very low maintenance animal. Once you set them up, other than replacing lights and doing general enrichment and maintenance, you're not really doing much. Like they don't cost a ton of money. Most of the US is going to have a warm season where sufficient weeds will grow in your area that you can pick and feed them wild food almost all summer, depending on where you are. Like we are now going to be in June in
a couple of days. Yeah.
Few days.
Yep.
I've been feeding wild food since the before April started, so somewhere in March, in the middle of March, like all the weeds started popping up, and I've just been feeding everybody weeds for 2 months, and it's going to go longer into the summer because I have a huge variety of wild plants that are either just growing in the open space near my house or in my backyard, or like I can plant them and they're going to be here. Dude, that's a huge money saver, like that's a big money saver. You put the lights on a timer. It's very simple. You don't have to balance the humidity or make sure everybody's got it. You just leave them. You just leave them alone. Feed them dandelions once in a while, like interact with them, clean up their poo, make sure the cage is fun for them, right? Change stuff around. Don't leave it stagnant because that gets boring, but it's cool. They're a great pet, like really, really good animals. You can take it as far as you want. You can keep them very, very minimally and, make it as easy on yourself as you can. That's great. You can also take it as far as you want, and you can go real hard with like super naturalistic, you can get in pretty deep and make it, you can spend thousands on the enclosure if you want and make it as incredible as you want. You can do a lot. So they're very flexible lizards, sort of like the, I'd imagine, you might compare them to like the Greek tortoise of the lizard world, right?
Okay.
Sort of like that. They're very adaptable, very resilient, not that hard to accommodate, generally speaking, that's kind of what I'm getting at. That's broadly what I mean.
Yeah. So mainly leafy green eater, once in a while you throw in some bugs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Is it necessary for them to have bugs in their diet, or is it just as an additional?
No, it's not. I wouldn't say it's required. So it's likely that as time goes along, our information around this is going to change. You know, back when people first started keeping Euros, it was kind of taken as a given that they must eat some insects in the wild. And then there was a trend that came up where people thought that feeding them too much insect matter was going to give them gout. And so it became kind of taboo to feed insects to Euromastyx. And people would cite it as what they call incidental feeding, right? Whereas they happen to consume bugs that are on the plants that they eat in the wild, which is, first of all, totally ridiculous and demeaning to the animals. Like, they're not stupid. They're not just like passively eating greens and chomping on whatever happens to be in there. Additionally, there's like wild footage of various Euromastyx eating wild beetles. I've got a great photo saved on my phone of a Sara hardwickii, which is a cousin to Euromastyx, eating a scorpion. You know, and there's famous studies cited by like Thomas Wilms, where he cites a juvenile Moroccan Euromastyx having 75% insect matter in its gut. But the problem is, these are all snapshots, right? We don't know what time of year. We don't know under what conditions the animal was eating that. We don't know if it had anything to do with its age, with its species. We don't have any idea. Okay. It's seeming more likely now that something around like 10% of the diet in the wild may consist of insects, but it's pretty obvious that they don't require the insects. And especially with regard to like how most people feed their animals, they're probably not gonna eat, they probably don't need the insects, because the veggies that we're giving them, most people are giving them, are just so rich and so nutrient dense. It's just not really necessary. You know, it's more likely that some of the gout stuff came up, probably related to just other inadequate care metrics, and it had less to do with the insects. I would wager hard money on that particular premise. I might be wrong, but I think that's probably true. But you can get away with not doing it. If you are going to do it, keep it really minimal. Keep it during the great times of year where their metabolism is working real hard, already kicking it full gear. Try not to give them a lot of bugs like in the off season when they're brumating, when they're cool. That's probably the wrong time to give them food. You know. So just stuff like that. Yeah. Like, you can give it to them. You don't have to.
And UVB.
Oh yeah. As high as you can get.
Yeah. Okay.
With the current lighting tech, go as high as you can.
Okay.
Yeah. As high as possible. And if you can add more than one UV light, great. Good. Do it. You know, add as much light as you can. They love bright lighting. There's no way to copy the sun. So any way you can get it as bright as possible, the better.
Yeah. With being a diurnal animal, are you running certain amount of like daylight hours?
Yeah, 12 hours on, 12 hours off most of the year. I shorten it sometimes during the winter.
Bedtime over here, so you know.
Yeah, my kid's losing it upstairs.
Yeah. So you said 12-hour shifts, 12 hours during
12 on, 12 off mostly. Yeah, I try to just follow you know, the general lighting schedule of where I live, right? So if it's sunrise, the lights come on. If it's sunset, the lights go off. And you can sit. But most places you can buy timers now that tune to what's going on outside.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah. With watering and stuff like that, like what is there? You know, giving them water, are you providing a bowl and stuff like that, or is it?
So some of this is going to have to do with where you live. So if I lived in like Florida and I was keeping a Euro inside, you might not really need to offer a water bowl. You could have one that you put in there and you fill up once a week. That'd be fine. They don't normally drink that much. Like, some animals drink, some don't. I've got video on my Instagram of one drinking water, but not all of them do that. It's just dependent on, a lot of it has to do with the individual. But I'm in Colorado, so it's dry as a bone here. So I'm always plugging water into the system somehow. So I keep 2 bowls inside the cage, one that has food. And I don't normally go with the food bowl. I just use it. I use the bowl for like training, right? To get them to understand that I bring food and to not freak out when they come around the bowl, so they can start learning to trust me, especially if they're wild caught. But it's also where I tend to put like special treats, whether it's like a mealworm or dry foods of some kind. So they all know to come over for that. So that's what I use the bowl for. But a lot of the food that I give them is kind of like free, in other words. So like I try to hang the food from stuff or like wrap it around a stick or feed it in a whole leaf. So they have to pull and rip it away because it's just good for their ergonomics. Right. So I do stuff like that. I throw flowers all over the cage so they find them as they walk around, you know, stuff like this. But I do, the other bowl is water bowl. And so I fill up that water bowl, you know, a couple of times a week. And sometimes I spray them. Sometimes I spray the cage. But then again, it's also, again, remember, it's like bone dry here. So in 30 minutes, it's back to like 3% humidity, or whatever. So actually 16% is the average here. So
yeah. And it's crazy to think about. I had Rufus Darden last podcast, and he has you know, sand boas. And same thing. We're talking about humidity levels and stuff.
Yeah.
Where like Florida, in my room right now, is usually 40% humidity in my house.
Brilliant. That's great.
And that's with AC running and stuff like that. So, you know, so yeah, that makes always same thing for like, I think any animal you're keeping inside, or you're keeping in captivity. It's like you have to take consideration your ambient temperature, your ambient humidity, wherever the enclosure is going to be, to adjust what you're providing for them as well.
Yeah, well, and it's also, but that's also in concert with the needs of that animal individually, right? So like if I had some kind of chameleon in here, like a Brachysia, it would be cold and it'd be moist and humid, right? But I can't do that here. So, you know, it has to be drier, but it doesn't mean there shouldn't be moisture in the system in some form. But it's also good. Sometimes they have to fast. Sometimes they have to, you know, like if I'm going to fast them for 3-4 days, well, yeah, I'm going to put water in there now, you know, because they'll probably find that water. You know? But that's because they're not going to be eating a lot of other stuff. Sometimes, you know, and I don't do that often. It's just something I do every now and again because it's good for them, especially before brumation. Let them kind of out a little bit. But you know, yeah, it depends on what you're keeping too. So it's just got to do with what you have, where you are, what their needs are, and how you meet and accommodate those needs. Because nothing needs it exactly the same all the time. And I saw a question in the chat said, what types of bugs? So I keep it pretty limited. The only thing I offer the Euros is going to be grasshoppers, mealworms, like superworms or regular little mealworms. And then occasionally I'll offer them something weird, like a spider. Like if a spider crawls through, I'll toss it in the cage. If they want to eat it, they can. You know, if they don't, I feed it to the Xenogama or something. But I don't do anything else. I won't give them dubia. I won't well, that's not true. Sometimes I've given them dubia, but like that's mostly like Moroccans and some of these other species where they've been documented eating a lot of bugs, you know, but I don't give the ornates or the jay rye a lot of bugs. But like if I was keeping Molly, Flavifasciata, or the nigroventris, the Moroccans, I'd probably give them a little more bugs. But they recognize, captive bred wild caught all recognize bugs as food. So they clearly eat them. They wouldn't recognize it as food if they didn't eat them in the wild. Okay. So period, right? If they didn't eat it, they would not eat it. Okay. There's a reason they have an instinct to eat a moving insect. And I'm telling you, it's a completely different reaction when you throw in a dandelion versus when you throw in a winged grasshopper that's freaking out. Totally different reaction. And they treat that grasshopper like it's $1 million. They go nuts. There's a reason. That's instinct. That's not incidental ingestion. They know what they're doing. But just like people, the way we live now is not the way we evolved to be. So it doesn't mean you should be giving them tons of bugs, right? Because context really matters. They may have an instinct to eat bugs because there are times in the wild where they can get nothing else and they see a bug. It's their only opportunity for sustenance or for water. So they have to eat it. That doesn't mean that they have to get it in captivity, you know?
Yeah, no, that's a great point because they said, you know, I think we think about, a lot of times humans think about keeping reptiles as, well, I have this all available to me, so I should be able to give available to them too, you know?
Sure. And we're still superimposing a lot of other pet ideas on our animals, right? So like people are still thinking in terms of guinea pigs or cats or ferrets or dogs, which that's a mammal, right? That's the same as you on some level. So the needs and the expression is really similar, but a reptile is a completely different creature with a different set of needs. So you have to tune your compass to be a little different for what you're looking for in these animals. It has to be different because they are totally different. Yeah.
And with brumation, because brumation is such a cool topic. You know, I do it with the hog nose and stuff. what time of year and how low are you getting in temps for them?
Yeah. So there's a couple ways you can do this. You can either you can approach this with like kind of with a harder approach. So, which is to say, you can cool them quite cold, right? So it's very likely that Euros can tolerate very, very cold temperatures, but how cold they should get is that's really up to debate, right? So because of the way I have everything set up with open tops and the whole room kind of goes up and down as one unit, I can let the room naturally do it for me, because when the seasons change here, it gets quite cold in the basement. So, you get a lot more heat just stuck here in the bottom. And so the natural drop in daytime highs and nighttime lows signals brumation to everybody, and they go down on their own. Even people who keep them in situations where things are much more precision controlled on the individual enclosure level, it's very hard to prevent them from going into brumation if they want to. They have instincts that drive them to do so. So they'll do it on their own, even if you don't touch anything. Now, not all the time. Sometimes they skip years, all kinds of weird stuff happens. But because of the way I have things set, they naturally kind of ebb and flow with the seasons. I've had them get as cold as 40 degrees, unintentionally, of course, so power outages, things like this. They can tolerate very, very cold temperatures, and they're just fine. If anything, it's probably good for them to feel those extremes from time to time, within reason. But yeah, that's how I do that. And I keep it pretty minimal. Most of them do it for me. I just listen to them. I very rarely push them to that.
Yeah.
The closest I'll do it is reducing daylight hours. So right as it naturally goes towards winter, the days get shorter. So I naturally shorten the days and then lengthen them in the spring and summer. So yeah.
And with the brumation, do you assist with lowering your heat?
I don't have to. You can if you want, but I don't have to because of the ambient temperature.
Okay.
But you can, right? I know lots of people who do that. Like if you live in Arizona, you might need it. Yeah, but it depends on where in Arizona. Like Flagstaff is probably fine, but Phoenix, maybe not. Yuma, you might have to make it happen. But it just depends. Yeah, that's very dependent on the individual animal. Sometimes they don't want it. And if they don't want to, fine, you don't have to. You can stay out, keep eating, doing what you want. But most of them, if they don't disappear altogether, most of them slow down dramatically. So even at the most extreme end of that, you'll still get reduced behavior. You'll get just generally less basking, less pooping, less eating, less everything.
Yeah.
So,
man, I think like I said, the brumation topic is such an important thing to bring up, because not many people, I tell people like my hog nose brumate in the winter, like basically, hibernate, and they're like, what? I didn't think reptiles don't need, first things reptiles need to heat to survive. They're gonna die and stuff like that. So going through that whole process and why, how, and stuff like that is very important.
Yeah, and I mean everything just, unless they live equatorially, they have pretty substantial seasonal changes, and they have to respond to that. So you're fighting billions of years of evolution by trying to not get them to brumate. Good luck. Good luck. You're gonna lose. I promise. For sure. And hognose in particular. Again, they're here.
Yeah,
it's damn cold here.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, damn cold, and they do fine. So now I'm not suggesting you make your snake go down to -1. Obviously they're burrowing in a place where it doesn't get quite that cold, but they're going to get cold, bro.
Yeah.
They're going to get damn cold. I bet those hogs get real low because some garter snakes freeze,
Yeah. Like I'll bring my hog nose. I have a merchandise fridge, and I'll get them down to, last year I got 45 for 2 months,
That seems right.
And it was perfectly fine, stuff like that. But the first year was a little, hesitation, nerves, double checking them and stuff like that. But
that's exactly the point, right? Because that's you tuning yourself to accommodate the animals on some level. We talk about this in jiu-jitsu a lot. Like this technique doesn't work for me. It's like, well, look, sometimes you have to adapt to make the technique work. And sometimes the technique adapts to you and your body and like what you're doing, So it's the same thing with the animals. You have to remain open and kind of trust them that they know that this is what they should be doing. Like if they're doing it, if you're doing all things right and the animal's doing well otherwise, when you see a sudden change like that, the first thing that should come to your mind is like, oh, maybe this is normal, you know, like that's usually going to be until it becomes like really worrying, or you see other obvious signs of problems, like, okay, or if it's way out of their normal routine, you know, like way out, like it's summertime and you know they're normally active, but this thing's not coming out. Okay, something's wrong.
Yeah.
You know, but if you know that something's weird, it's like, oh yeah, they normally do this. And it's totally a shocker. Sometimes it's not even a gradual progression. Sometimes it's as straightforward as today on September 20th, the Moroccan Euromastyx did not come out, and I didn't see that animal until February. You know, September, October, November, December, January, February. That's 6 months of being MIA, bro. They're gone. And you're like, are you alive? You know, and inevitably you pop open the hide and it's under there, pissy as hell.
What are you doing? Yeah.
I've had animals gain inches in size in brumation.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what did you do? Like, what happened? That's what it's for. It's like sleep for us. We have to sleep. The brumation's a kind of sleep for the animals in a way. You know, they're doing a big reset, big physiological reset. Very, very important, very healthy behavior. You know.
So with brumation, do you see that it's necessary for them to reproduce?
No.
They'll
breed either way. But you know, I've had animals that just don't seem to brumate at all and they breed. So, no, I don't think it matters. And I've had very, very minor brumations and very, very, very extreme ones, and they both breed the same. Maybe long term, maybe in 20 years, it turns out when they brumate harder, they'll have a longer breeding life. I don't know. But for now, no, it doesn't seem to matter.
Gotcha. Okay. With you know, you sent some pics with these guys. Are they? This is what ornate?
Yeah, it's a juvenile female ornate.
Okay. And then here we have
male ornate.
A male. Okay. And then the red one.
Yeah, it's a Euromastyx J.
Okay. Yeah. With the males and females, are males and females born the colors they are as adults?
No, they all in every species there's a juvenile color.
Okay.
And then all of them go through an ontogenetic color development that distinguishes them as either their species or their sex or both. They don't all look like, not all of them are sexually dimorphic in the same way. You can have some species where the females are as colorful or more than a male. But most of them have some level of dimorphism where the males are more colorful on average, but you can get very colorful females. I've never seen an ugly male Euro of any species, as long as they're healthy, right? Like they're going to be great looking. And they're really, really variable. Most species have some degree of variability. Some have more than, you know, some have more. Like ornates are probably up there with like the most variable in the way they look. Just because there's so many colors present in the first place in like just the normal animal. So there's a lot of variety, like a lot. But a lot of species, you know, some of them just have, you know, one or two forms, you know, some of them all look the same for the most part, male or female. Like Egyptians, they look the same, male or female, you know. Yeah, so it depends on the species. Yeah.
Gotcha. With the coloration, is there any, like, depending on even like, let's say the ornates, any what's it called, locality changes and stuff like that?
Probably. I mean, for the most part, I don't really, the locality thing is hard because when it comes to imported animals, you're mostly taking the word of the importer or the exporter. So it's hard to say, like, did they really come from there? And like, how big of a territory are we talking about here? Because if the shipment was like 5,000 animals, I'm sure they didn't come from the same square mile of hillside, you know?
Yeah.
So like the further away you get, the more likely they are to say things like you know, like with tortoises, you might say the Syrian locality. It's like, well, okay, so you know they're from Syria, but like there are parts of Syria that are separated by hundreds and hundreds of miles. And if you have two Syrian collected golden Greek tortoises, if one comes from the north, one comes from the south, they're not the same thing, you know? But you know, what you see is broad differences between import groups with Euros. So you see ones that clearly, like, yeah, this one looks like the ones that came in 2010, for example. You know, that's kind of the look. But the problem is ornates in particular are so variable that you can get ones that look the same in localities separated by thousands of miles.
Yeah.
But you can also get ones that look really, really different, even if they're the same color form, like the same kind of color combo, like blue and orange might look different from different localities, but they also might look different in clutch mates, you know? So I have you can have clutch mates that one's blue, one's green, one's got yellow, one's got orange, one has orange, one has pink or like a reddish color. You know, some are blue, some are cobalt blue, some are sky blue, some are aqua blue, some are green where maybe they're pine green, or maybe they're emerald green, or maybe they're Christmas kind of green, you know, like it's really, really, really variable, at least in ornates in particular. Not as much variety in some of the others, but you still get similar differentiation, you know?
Yeah. And with that, is there any talks or, you know, efforts to do like line breeding and stuff like that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, for sure. So right now there's three like existing color mutations that are bred. There's some I'm working on in the side that I haven't told anybody about yet. So I've got some of those coming, but there's like lavender albino J-Rye, there's a patternless albino Molly, patternless Molly, not patternless albino, just patternless Molly. And then there's a hypo ornate by Scott Wilson. But they're all different. But so far, no one's bred them long enough, other than like me and maybe one or two other people. No one's really bred them long enough to say like, I'm specifically shooting for blue or whatever, because they take a long time to mature. It's hard to get successive generations. It's hard to know from a baby what they're going to look like as an adult. So it makes it really hard to select for something in particular, because you'd have to retain a lot more holdbacks and then know, okay, these both have blue and orange. Let me breed those two together and see if most of their offspring are blue and orange. The problem is you can breed two blue and orange together and get green. So you know, it's hard. It's challenging to push things in that direction. Surely it will be done, but it's just going to take more time than with something like a Xenogama taylori, where within 3-4 generations, I can safely say these will be more orange than your average one, you know? So, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. And, you know, and you bringing up the morphs and stuff like that, I haven't dived deep enough to like look at the morphs.
There's not many. It's very nascent. So it makes sense that you haven't seen them.
Okay. Got you. With what's just as a regular without the morphs, what's the average price range of a Euromastyx?
It'll vary based on species, but it can be anywhere from $300 to $1,500 depending on the species and like the rarity, you know. Average probably falls somewhere in the 500 range.
Okay. And that's I mean, for what we were talking about earlier, more people getting into it. To me, that's the perfect price range where people are willing to spend some money on an animal, but it's not too much out of the reach, right?
Right.
So that's another plus for Euromastyx also because of the price range.
Yeah.
On that, and of course, right. Once you get to more specialities, it gets a little higher and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
But it's a good spread right now. That's for sure.
Yeah. If you had to say with hatching these guys out, what has been like your favorite thing about reproducing them?
Right now it's probably seeing F4, you know, like that's pretty damn cool. Seeing 4th generation captive bred is pretty special. That's when it, you know, because that's like 15 years of work, minimum, just to get to that. It's hard. So that's good. That's really cool. It's hard to point to one thing because the whole process is great.
Yeah.
So it's hard to point to one thing, but right now that's something that I take some level of pride in.
No, that's definitely a milestone. You know, a lot of people don't understand the time it takes to build those generations within your own collection.
Yeah, long time. With stuff that doesn't mature in a year, it's really hard.
Yeah.
You know, it takes a lot of time, a lot of compounded time. You know.
So what's the average maturity for females and males?
3 to 5 years.
Okay.
3 would be pretty impressive. 5 is probably closer to accurate. 4 would be maybe good, really good. If you can get 4, it's pretty solid.
Okay.
It's not necessarily better to get it sooner or later. It doesn't really It's not really how the trade-off goes.
Mhm.
But yeah, about that 3 to 5 range, and then the lifespan varies from like 15 all the way to 60. So
Wow.
yeah, it
Yeah.
depends on the size of the species. Like Egyptians live forever, you know, they'll probably live as long as a cyclura or a ball python. But smaller species like Thomasii ocellata, princeps probably have shorter lifespans, like 15 years, 20 years, something like that.
That's cool, man.
Mhm.
Yeah, man. And I think that's another thing too, where when people are getting into reptiles, the commitment that you have to make to some reptiles, right? Like you
Yeah.
got tortoises,
Yep.
right? That's such a big commitment because of the lifespan they have.
100-year commitment.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, and getting into that stuff is really cool.
Yep. Like my son's going to inherit them, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
like
for sure.
That's what's going to happen. He's going to inherit dad's tortoises.
Yeah.
Won't leave him any money. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, man, a 50-year-old tortoise. It's
pretty good.
Pretty good, you know.
That's pretty good. Yeah,
It's
way better than money. Let's be clear.
Yeah, man, that's cool.
Yeah.
Before we close out tonight, and stuff
Sure.
that any last topic you want to bring up, or that you want the viewers to know about you and your animals?
Oh, no, probably not about me or the animals or anything. I mean, I could say more things about herpetoculture broadly.
Yeah.
It's just it's really new. This is super new. We need a lot of people who can communicate well, who can set a good example, who can write the books and the blog posts and the make the YouTube channels and the whatever that are going to make it possible for us to do this in the future so the next generation can, and so young, industrious, passionate people can come through and do this. So when you do it, when you engage in it, you should have a long-term perspective. And you should probably use AI to learn more. If you're not, you're way behind, honestly. Like, I don't mean to sound harsh, but that's true. You need to use them to get smarter, to get better at what you do. And if you don't, you probably don't understand how useful it is. So give it a shot.
Oh man, great closing thoughts, because I use it all the time,
all the time, every day.
It's talk about like developing herpetoculture more.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that you do a lot of one of the biggest things I noticed recently was that you were talking about feeding weeds and the cycles of stuff for that.
Mm-hmm.
Putting that out.
Yeah.
Husbandry and preventive care that I saw on your page too, talking about how husbandry can be preventive care.
It is. Yeah.
And it's crazy because, like, even as humans, we're just getting figured that out as well, or making it more mainstream too, So that's a really cool topic that I think that maybe we need to look more into it and really study of it.
A lot more, not a little, a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like a lot. Really, like everyone should do that.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, man.
Yeah.
Where can people find you if they want to go more really deep into the Euromastyx stuff like that?
Yeah. All the platforms, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, website, Patreon. Everything's Arids Only, Arids Only. So that's where I put everything up. And there's no secrets either. Like, yeah, I've got like secret morphs or whatever. Sure, that's fine. But care-wise and methodology-wise, I am a completely open book. So I put everything out, and if it means something to you, check it out.
Cool. Yeah, man. I really appreciate you tonight, guys. That if you guys watched and you guys have any other questions, we'll probably do a round 2. Once it gets closer to maybe getting some of those morphs out and stuff like that.
Sure.
It'd be cool to see some of that stuff.
Yeah, no problem.
This just has, like we're talking about how things develop and change and add different things to our husbandry. Mm-hmm. Definitely like to have you back on again.
Anytime.
Again, thanks for the taking your time and talking to us tonight. And
sure.
I'm definitely gonna be picking more of your brain and looking at all your social media and stuff for that, what you put out, because these animals really do interest me as well.
Cool. So yeah, anytime, man. Let me know. Happy to chat anytime.
For sure, guys. Thank you everybody for joining us tonight. and make sure to subscribe and like the channel, and we'll see you guys on the next one.